The introduction has been read out to us, so I won't dwell more on it. I'll just paraphrase one or two things. It's just to highlight that every human being has like a longing, or we desire some sort of satisfaction. We have some yearnings. Everybody have aspiration or expectation you want to be met. Some of us, when we are in the company of our friends, we feel some sort of fulfillment. Some, if you have the opportunity to be in school, you feel happy. You feel some sort of freedom. You feel a sense of fresh air. Some people, when you get to your room or your house, you feel fulfilled, satisfied, like, oh, finally I'm home. You get that sense of satisfaction. Some of us, it might be probably when we come to church, we feel some sense of satisfaction. We feel delighted, we are happy, sort of calmness and peace. So there are different things for different people. So today they are telling us that this longing that man feels actually started long before man was in the Garden of Eden. And we saw the same thing when God will come in the cool of day to the garden to come and have fellowship with man. So meaning that every one of us have this side of us that we want met. We have this desire, we have this longing that we want met. And today we want to see the example of that as being described by the psalmist. But before we go ahead, I'm being given this, that the Youth Fellowship Bible Quiz competition coming up in December. If you have not been able to register online and you want to participate, the form is here. This is strictly for First Baptist Church members only. So if you have the interest, and I know to be coming with some good rewards. So if you want to participate and you are not able to register online, you can get the form, fill and send it back to me. So if you have desire for this, please let me know to participate in this. We'll go back to our lesson. So our first lesson today says, blessedness of longing for God's temple. Blessedness of longing for God's temple. We read from 84, verse 1 to 4. Psalm 84, verse 1 to 4. If you are there, you can read for us. Psalm 84, verse 1 to 4. Who is reading for us?
How amiable are thy tabernacles, O Lord of hosts! My soul longeth, yea, even fainteth for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God. Here the sparrow hath found an house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young, even thine altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are they that dwell in thy house, for they will be praising thee.
As a form of introduction or background, we have been told that the book of Psalms 84 is such a book that pilgrims, strangers, foreigners, travelers, they sing. You know, in Yoruba, it is this, the book of Psalms is called what in Yoruba? How many of us are Yoruba here? We are all Yoruba now, right? What is Psalms called? Okay, class captain. Orin. What is Orin in English? Song. So, this Psalms is referred to as songs, like music that was composed. That is why, if you have been in the choir, you will see that some choir renditions, those words, they're actually from the Psalms, especially for composers like G.F. Handel. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed is Psalm. It's in the Bible. Some from the Corinthians, from the New Testament, but mostly from Psalms. And so forth and so, but thanks be to God from the Psalms. So, and so on and so forth. So these are expressions of people when they have certain experiences with God. So here we have been told that this is the song that pilgrims, strangers, foreigners, they sing when they are going into the temple. You know, unlike our own day today, that even around your house alone, around your house, how many churches do you have close to you? Without entering bus, how many churches do you have close to you? 4. Thank you. How many churches do you have close to where you stay? Without entering bus, you have to just take a walk that you will find. Like how many? That you know of. 2. How many churches do you have close to you? 3. There's even one opposite your house. So, in their own days, the place of worship is not so common. You will have to travel a long distance to get to church. And that is why most of them only have the opportunity of going to the temple during festivities. You are doing feast of this, doing harvest of that, during the, what's it called? Different major occasions is the opportunity that get people to church. Maybe because church is so common in our own days today, that is why we don't give much credence to church. So here, for us to have an understanding of what is being said here, so we are saying that this is the song that people sing. If you look at it, it said, how amiable are the tabernacles, O Lord of hosts. You are wondering, how can somebody be saying that, how amiable? Another version will say maybe how beauteous or how good it is to be in the house of the Lord. And you are wondering, it's not a place you go every Sunday. No. These people don't have the opportunity of going to church every Sunday. Church going is luxury. Because you have to travel miles. You only have the opportunity of being there doing those services. And then he now says, my soul longeth, yea, even fainteth for the court of the Lord. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God. This is an expression of, this is why I am feeling this way. Because I don't have the opportunity to always be in God's house. My soul fainted. My heart yearns that, wow, this is a place where I would rather be. But I don't have the opportunity to always be. It's not because I don't want to go, but because I don't have the opportunity of going there. Now look at what he said. In verse 3, he said, thus a nest for herself, where she may lay her young, even in thine altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Look at it, for you to know how serious this case is. You know, sometimes when we are in the church, you just see birds flying, right? The psalmist is saying that even the sparrow, the birds, they are even more lucky than I am. Without much wahala. He said they even build nests in your house. Do you know what he's saying? He said, unlike me, that I have to wait till that special location before I can come to church. Even a bird has found a nest in your house. He dwells there all of the time. He said, that is how I want to become. That is what I long for. He said, even at your altar, you will just see birds. You know, in those days, if you look at the Bible, the altar is so big. If you have watched the preaching of Bishop T.D. Jakes, when he was talking about the altar, he tried to use some pictures and illustration, and he showed how the altar is, how the pulpit, everything looks. He said, even at thy altar, the birds, they put a nest there. Why would the psalmist have such feeling, such yearning, such desire? It's because the church of God is not just a place of side attraction. It's not just a place of meeting with people. It's not just a place of, I don't have anything to do, let me just go there. It's a place of encounter, a place of fellowship where God dwells. So he's saying that that kind of place is where I want to be. He said, look at me. Even the bird is more lucky than I am. The birds have a nest permanently in your house. Even at thy altar, they dwell there all of the time. I don't have such grace. Then, in verse 4, he said, blessed are they that dwell in thy house. They will be still praising thee, Selah. Yeah, he's saying, he's not talking about the pastors. The part to always be in the church. He said, they are blessed. He said, they are blessed, unlike me, because they are so lucky. What I don't have, what I lack, they have it easily for them. They dwell. It means that, you don't know what the guy is saying. He's saying that it means that every day of their life, they are being blessed. Oh, Nishoro, they don't have problem. So it means that for you to be blessed, for you to have satisfaction, for you to have your desire, your panting, your yearning, your need met, you have to be in the presence of God. That is basically what the psalmist is saying. And you recall that in those days, manifestation of God happens only in the temple, where the high priest will go into the Holy of Holies. So for you to have an encounter with God, you need to be in the temple. So he's saying that they are blessed because they are always in the presence of God. The first challenge to us is this. Do we understand the importance of the house of God? Yes, you can say that today, God no longer dwells in physical building. God dwells in his people. But here, he's telling us that where God dwells is not just yourself by yourself. But he said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, where is he? There. So he's talking about corporate fellowship. So if you say, I'm now a church, only you are not the church. The church is the corporate fellowship. Coming together of believers. He said, there I am. He's not saying where 1. He said, where 2 or more. So it has to be, what he's saying is that you should take desire, you should take longing in being in the corporate fellowship of the people of God. there is an encounter. There is blessing. And that is why our first lesson is talking about the blessedness. The blessedness of longing for God's temple. So look at such yearning that the psalmist is saying. He said, it's something that is in my heart. He said, I always want to be in your temple. What is our own desire? How do we have our yearnings met? You know, when I was trying to paraphrase the introduction, where they say every man has a sort of longing in their heart. Everybody has a need. Some of us, when we are in the company of our friends, we feel fulfilled, we are calm. Even if you have been stressed all the week, say, I will see Ade on Sunday. By the time we begin to gist, everything is gone. Some, it might be a case of when you are all by yourself, in your room, in your corner, you just feel the calmness, you are free from every other person. Some, it might be when we are at work, you just get everything in the work. Then everything, you forgot about every other thing. But the psalmist is saying that the true satisfaction is actually in the yearning for God. Even God has a need, to the point that they said in the cool of day, he will come to the Garden of Eden to have a fellowship with man. So it is important. That's why the Bible says that. He said, do not neglect the congregation of brethren. Because it is important. There is the presence of God. There is actually the power of God. There God is. So it is important that we have such yearning and such. We should be envious of people to say, some people are in the presence of God now. How I wish. You know, you're at work, you're like, how can I connect? Even if it is a 10 praise and worship song you are playing that will put you in that mood. How can I connect? Or even if it's a previous message, while you are working, just put, that key your mind back to it. That is what the psalmist is saying, that those are the kind of yearnings that I have. The people who understand this most are people who are sick, on the sick bed, and they are coming to give them the news of what is happening in the church. Then they will remember, brother Alamide ló ń kọ praise and worship ń sing. I know the way we'll be singing the praise and worship. I know the kind of song I will be hearing. Even if you have the privilege of watching the service online, it can't be the same as being in it. Think about it. When we're locked down, you could not come to church. The moment you heard that you can now go to church, how did you feel? Forget the fact that you have not seen a lot of people for a long time. You know, the kind of feeling that finally I get to be in the church. Some days you just look around and say, this is the church. Some people didn't have the opportunity to come back. So those are the kind of yearnings, the longing that the psalmist had. That's the kind of passion that they had. Now, the presence of God is so common around us. We should not take it for granted. It should be our desire that our satisfaction, our blessing, our wholeness is in it. We should take advantage of the congregation of brethren. And I pray God will help us in Jesus' name. The second lesson says, the blessedness of traveling to worship God. The blessedness of traveling to worship God. Psalm 84, now reading verse 5 to 9. Psalm 84, verse 5 to 9. Don't forget, our topic is the joy of worship. The joy of worship. We are studying from the book of Psalms 84. For our first lesson, we read 84, verse 1 to 4. And for our second lesson, the blessedness of traveling to worship God. Psalm 84, verse 5 to 9. Who is reading for us?
Blessed is the man whose strength is in you, whose heart is set on pilgrimage, as they pass through the valley of Baca. They make it a spring. The rain also covers it with pools. They go from strength to strength. Each one appears before God in Zion. O Lord God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob. Verse 9. O God, behold our shield, and look upon the face of your anointed.
Thank you, man. The blessedness of traveling to worship God. Now look at it. Like I said earlier, the place of worship is a place where they need to travel to get to. And here in verse 5, it expresses when people are going. And it says, blessed is the man whose strength is in thee, in whose heart are the ways of them, who passing through the valley of Baca make it well, and rain also filleth the pool. When we were younger and we were coming to church, we were plenty then. We, Folaromis, the Ajahos, we used to live on the mainland, around Costain side. Most Saturdays, especially when it is sanitation day, those days, sanitation, no movement. Normally, the meeting will come for in the church starts from 4 o'clock, which is the RA meeting. We don't have any business to be in church before then. Do you know that we will check all the way from our house on the mainland? We will first check. For some weird reason, we don't get tired. Where are we coming to? We are coming to church. We will check all the way from the mainland. We will first branch at Akpogbon Ologbo. We will go there with the Folaran Miss. We will gist small. All of us will pack ourselves. We will join body. We will start checking again from church, from their own place at Akpogbon. We will check all the way down. We will not even pass shortcut too. We will look for ways that will make the journey longer for us. Because we know if you get to church, we are even still early. Even if you go back to Costa and start the journey again, we still have enough time. We will now trek through Leventis and come all the way down to church. We don't get tired. By the time we get to church, it looks as if our strength has just come anew. By the time we now get to church, we'll still meet other people around Lagos and we'll come to church, we'll just this. Before, we'll wait for RA. After we finish our own, we'll wait for the leaders to finish. The GA will finish. All of us will now start the journey again. By the time the bus is taking us back home, we don't want to leave each other. In those days, maybe because we were younger, and probably our focus was the fact that we're just going to see ourselves, we're going to come to church. But what I'm trying to bring out here is this. The Bible tells us that as these people travel, because of their focus, they don't get tired. It said they get strength. Bible scholar says that from that verse 6 that we read, they said, who passing through the valley of Baca make it well. They said the place of Baca cannot be easily described, but it's been understood as a place of refreshment. As a place of refreshment and a place of strength. So it means that when they are going through the journey, they pass through such a place where they can refresh themselves and they continue with the journey. But what we see here is that as people move on, there was resources available. As people move on, they were receiving strength for themselves. So it shows that because of the expectation, the intent, the purpose, where they are going to, the end product, actually made supply available. It says, who passing through the valley of Baca maketh it well. The rain also filleth the pools. They go from strength to strength. Every one of them in Zion appeareth before God. O God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob. Behold, our God, our shield, and look upon the face of thy anointed. I haven't gone through all of this experience. Then you have such a boldness, such a mindset to then call upon God. So, like we said, the blessedness of those traveling to worship God, it becomes your strength. It gives you supply. It gives you resources. Then it's available for the kind of blessing that you require. I don't know what it cost most of us to get here this morning. Some of us have to probably come in our cars. Some have to come by public transport. Maybe some even have to take it. Maybe it was not even convenient for a lot of people. But we have an expectation. We have an expectation. And all through the way, God has helped us to be here finally, eventually. Even at times, some of us even go through 1 or 2 challenges. But we don't go back on the way. We will still continue. Abby? And by the time we come here, and it is time for us to pray, we have an understanding that there is a God that we have come to meet. And who the psalmist has called to be what? Our shield. And one that we can call to say, look upon us. So such joy, such kind of mindset, such kind of boldness we possess. Such kind of desire we have, and we also receive in God. The challenge for us is that the kind of experience that the psalmists have today, it should be the same for us. That we get fulfilled by worshiping God and also give our whole attention to Him. That Him alone will satisfy us. There's a quote here that I want to read in our lesson. It's by Charles Spurgeon. He said, the blessedness of worship belongs not to the half-hearted, the listless worshippers, but to those who throw all their energies into it. Neither prayer nor praise, nor the hearing of the word will be pleasant or profitable to persons who have left their hearts behind them. So, for those who expect or who wants to receive such blessing from God, are those who come with such passion, such energy. Not those who have left their heart behind them, that everything that comes, we don't even hear. He said, the kind of people who enjoy the blessing, even from the word, from the choruses, from the messages, are those who come with strength and energy and expectation. And that's why the Bible says that love the Lord your God with the whole of your heart and with the whole of your mind. I pray God will help us. The last lesson, the blessedness of God's presence. The blessedness of God's presence. Verse 10 to 12. We are reading from the book of Psalm 84. Psalm 84, verse 10 to 12.
For a day in your court is better than 1,000. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold for those who walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man who trusts in you.
Thank you, man. Look at where the psalmist started from. Initially, he expressed his longing and the vacuum in his heart. Later, he even said the sparrow, a bird, was better than him. That even a bird has a permanent nest, a permanent place to be dwelling in his temple. But he doesn't have that privilege. It takes him a long time to be in the presence of God. It takes him much travel to actually approach the presence of God. But even a bird dwells in the presence of God forever. Secondly, he even said that, he said those who dwell in the house of the Lord, the Levites, the sextons and the like, said they are even more blessed than he is. Now look at the last part, when he talks about the blessedness of God's presence. In verse 10, say, for a day in your court is better than 1,000. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tent of the wickedness. The only person that can understand this is who have tasted the goodness of God and understand what the presence of God brings. And if you look at the experience of the psalmist, of how he has experienced God, it's when you are in the presence of God. And that's why he can say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So he understands what it is. He knows that in the presence of God, there is that blessedness. He knows that in the presence of God, there is that fresh encounter. And that's why he says that I might not be a bird that have the opportunity of dwelling in the house of God. I might not be a Levite, but I would rather be a doorkeeper. Let me just be there and be in the. He said because a day in the presence of God is better than spending a long time in the tents of the enemy. It's better than being in the tent of the enemy. He said, for the Lord is a sun and a shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. So, number one, it tells us that for those, and being the sun can address several things in our life. Think about it. You wake up in the day and you can't find the sun. What will happen? You wake up one day and you can't find the sun. What will happen? You just saw that, it's 7 o'clock now. How come there's no sun? You say it's eclipse of the what? You say it's eclipse of the sun, Abi, that, what's going on? It's not normal, Abi. But aside from that, the Bible tells us that, he said, the Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in his wings. So he does so many things. You know, when you give birth to a child and the child has some sort of issue, they will say, go and expose that child to the sun. Abi? It means that if there is no sun, that thing cannot be addressed. When there is a gap in our life, God is that sun that actually heals and takes away that shortcoming. Some elderly people, when they are going on that, they say, go and put them in the sun. So aside from that, it also becomes light for us. The Lord shield us. And then now says, it's also a shield for us. Those who go into battle, they understand what a shield means. Even in such a time that we are now. That is the blessedness of being in God's temple. And then again, it says that no good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man that trusted in thee. That is the blessing of being in God's presence. Or being in God's presence. Don't forget, the psalmists have such a yearning, having understood what it means to be in the presence of God and what God can do. And then he has the desire to always be in God's presence. And he has the understanding of what God can do when you are in His presence. And don't let us forget, yes, God no longer dwells in physical building, but God dwells in the company of his people. That's why we should not forsake the coming together of brethren. Corporate prayer is very important. You know, a lot of us, even me, I'm guilty of it most of the time. We will say, I'll watch the service online. But do you know that it's not the same thing? Because there is power in corporate fellowship. There God dwells. And that's what he's talking about. Remember, I said, where 2 or 3 are gathered. Yes, we are not saying that there is restriction in the power of God. You can be in your house watching the service online, and the power of God can still reach you, yes? But however, there's also power, great power, in corporate fellowship. This kind of yearning that the travelers, even the psalmist is talking about here, existed because the house of God was far. How about today that we have the presence of God so close to us? How much do we embrace it? How much do we have an understanding and tap into it? Recently, I was telling a colleague that with the rate of traffic in Lagos, pretty soon, if church leaders don't get involved and start engaging the government, telling them the right thing to do, you just notice that a time will come, we'll all start giving excuses. First, we'll start from midweek service. There is traffic in my area. The place is far. There is that thing that attendance, and if you ask what is happening really, people will blame it on stress. You say, don't know the traffic of what is going on in my area. And everywhere in Lagos today, there's one construction or the other. So people start giving excuses for not being in the midweek service. And you see the attendance are dwindling. And it's not just peculiar to our church. Before you know it, it will move to Sunday worship. Look at the attendance. Some people might say, yeah, there is COVID. Are they not going to work? You people who are doing work from home, they are now going back to work. They are going to parties. But you will say, my Saturday and Sunday, I don't joke with it. I use it to rest. The week is always crazy. That is where it's getting to. But for us that we have the understanding of the power of corporate fellowship, then we want to push ourselves extra further to say, blessed is the man who dwells in the presence of God. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than dwell in the tents of my enemy. Said, because I know how amiable it is to dwell in the house of God. And that's what the psalmist is telling us today. Let us embrace corporate fellowship. Let us embrace corporate gathering. And let us always dwell in the presence of God. Take opportunity and take advantage of it. And I pray God will always help us in Jesus' name. That is our lesson for today. The topic is the joy of worship. The joy of worship. And we saw it in the desire to always be in God's presence, irrespective of the distance. We saw it in the journey in itself, what it takes, and we also saw it in abiding in God's presence. At this time, we'll give for contribution and question. Contribution and question. We read from the book of Psalms 84. We read from Psalms 84, and our topic is the joy of worship. Question, contribution. The joy of worship. Okay.
All right, mine is actually a contribution of an experience I had some years back. It's been quite a long time though, but our discussion this morning actually reminds me of that particular experience. I can remember back then when I was in school, some 12, 15 years back, I was actually sick, had some, though not a cancerous growth in my body, and then I went for an operation and I thought everything was fine. And so I went on with life. And after some time, that particular pain now came up again and I was a bit confused. So I was actually scheduled to actually go see a specialist somewhere in Osun State. And so then I was schooling at Ibadan, and then I was a worshiper, let me put it that way. And I could remember that then I just told my father that, okay, I was actually going to go to Osun, but I had a program at Ibadan in church, in school fellowship, that I would rather go for that program first, and then after that program, I would now go and see that doctor in Osun State. So I went for the program, a normal school fellowship gathering and everything, and then one of my requests then in that prayer was, God, just take this thing away, and then that was just it. So after that program, I now traveled down to Osun to go and see that specialist. So when the guy saw me, he was like, there's nothing wrong with you now. What is wrong? What, you have malaria? I think you should take a strong malaria drug. Maybe the malaria drugs you have been taking is not a very strong one. I can't forget the drug he recommended. He said, I will recommend Alfan for you. Alfan, in those days, it used to be a very strong malaria drug, and it was quite expensive then. And he recommended Alfan for me, and that was all. So our discussion this morning brought me to, when we go to worship, do we actually have an expectation, or is it a routine? In my house, Sunday, either you like it or not, you must go and worship. Or do we have an expectation to say, as I am going to worship, like what is read from, the quote he read from Charles Spurgeon, he said, worship, when you want to experience the goodness of God, it's for those that have come there with wholeheartedness. They have come with a heart to say, I have come to see God. And I know in this house there is God. And so each time we go with that expectation, we see something happening to us. You know, these days, because I work on Sundays, I just told myself that anytime I'm not working on Sunday, whatever is going to cost me, I must get to church. And it has been working for me. Each time I come to church, I feel that blessedness. My spirit is lifted. And so each one of us should also learn from that. COVID or no COVID, whatever it is, we should embrace it. For me, that testimony keeps coming back. And to somebody that didn't know what had happened before, the person just thought maybe this person was cooking up a story. But I knew I was ill. I knew there was an issue because I'd already gone for a first set of surgery and I was actually going in for another one. So God actually blesses his people when they come to his place of worship with wholeheartedness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. Any other contribution or question? Contribution, question? Okay, let's take a question from our lesson. What can the church do to encourage believers, especially the young ones, to find pleasure in God's presence? What can the church do to encourage believers, especially young ones, to find pleasure in God's presence? Do you hear the question? Or should I read it again? What can the church do to encourage believers, especially the young ones, to find pleasure in God's presence? What can the church do to encourage believers to find pleasure in God's presence?
Number one thing that a church must know is that you must give the space for participation of the youth in any program of the youth. Because when you know that this is a chance for me, many of our pastors, like Reverend Animasha normally say, he said the first time he minister on stage, a crowded place, was an opportunity. And that has been his testimony that he cannot even forget in his life. So number one, they must give room for the youth to be participating in programming that requires fellowship with the church. Secondly, they must give a kind of awareness that this church is built on your foundation. They cannot just they are the one commitment to it. So his contribution is allow youth participation in the church. Allow the young people to participate and also give them understanding that the future of the church depends on them. Any other one? How can the church encourage believers to find fulfillment in the presence of God? How can the church encourage believers, especially the young ones? Okay, let me put it this way. How can the church encourage you to find satisfaction in the presence of God? Speak for yourself. Okay.
By organizing programs that we know that these youth, they will be interested in. Just like that, the program we're going to have on November 20th. That the one that said it has to do with drama and music presentation. You see so many people are going to come because they are going to be interested in that. They are going to be interested in music and drama. Many people are going to come, especially youths. They are going to.
So our sister is being inspired and being satisfied by the forthcoming program that has said that there will be music, ministration, and drama. So she feels such a thing will encourage her in the presence of God. How can the church also encourage you too? How can the church encourage you? If you don't talk now, don't come tomorrow